Okay, I believe we are live. I've got recording started on the Zoom. Those of you who join us every week know that I tend to forget that. It is just now noon, and Eric will be joining us in just a moment. Kind of a fun episode today. We haven't done. I don't know if I should give away what we're doing today. But we haven't done an episode like this in quite some time. It has been, let's see, it's been 7 years. I think it's been 7 years since we've done an episode like that. Well, technically we did a variant of this episode in 2018, so 4 years. I'll talk about this when we record. I got this in my notes. I'll talk about this when we record. But yeah, it's been a little while since we've done one of these, so this will be exciting. Let me see what's going on here. All right. In case you're wondering, I'm checking YouTube. Ah, here we go. Check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Checking YouTube. Watching myself. Here we go. Check. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right, that's coming through okay. Good deal. Close out of that. Man, there's a lot of folks live right now. Matt Geekgab, they're live right now. Luria Petrucci, she's live right now. We're live. That looks like that's it. Well, that's it from those I subscribe to anyway. Let's see. Let's get Eric into guest one here.
Now, 1 second. Let me make sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was trying to figure out, all right, what's going on? It changed the sound.
I don't know why my
one camera never works.
I want to get that on a T-shirt. What's going on?
I don't know why.
What's going on?
Okay, so here we go.
Yes, I'm recording.
I want to do. Oh, come on. Where the heck is it? Wouldn't you think like it's on any account? Okay, here we go.
Look at all those presents. Did you accidentally wrap the chicken fan?
What'd you say?
I said, look at all those presents. Did you wrap the chicken fan?
Hello?
Hello?
I can hear you. Good.
What are you doing?
I'm not doing much, actually.
I can't give my bad dad joke for a third time.
What is your bad dad joke?
I said, look at
We've
all
been
those.
watching a lot of those lately.
I know. I said, look at all those presents behind you. Did you accidentally wrap the chicken fan?
That's awesome. No, the chicken fan is still, although that does actually make a good idea. I should wrap that chicken fan. And, I got that from somebody for fixing their computer.
Oh.
I got a chicken fan. It was like brand new. They had it at their house. They did give me some money too, but it basically was that. So I took it, and actually, it served its purpose in the bathroom, right? I forget which. There was like a really hot place in the house where we used to live, and so the chicken fan would be in there and be on.
So for
Now everybody's
doing,
frozen.
I assume this was
What's
computer
going
work.
on?
So for doing computer work, you,
Why is this happening?
I can hear you.
It went so good last time.
I can hear you.
Should I?
Last time. He's not even looking at me. Yo. Oh, I guess I'm going to have to send him a message here. Oops, that's the wrong one. I got to send him a message. Interview chat. Here we go. Oops. No, he disappeared. Oh, dear. Eric. What is he doing? He disappeared. We should probably just start recording or going live at 10 after 12. That seems to be about the time that we get stuff straightened out. But this is part of the fun, right? I was trading an email with a friend of mine out on the West Coast. I didn't realize he listened to the show. And I said, part of the fun, we've been doing this since August, part of the fun of doing the live stream is that you guys get to see warts and all the recording process. This is what we've gone through for 17 years. 17 years we've gone through this. I have little problems with getting the audio connected or video connected or whatever. Well, we didn't do much for video, but getting audio connected, problems with Skype, problems with recording. We often use Call Recorder with Skype on Ecamm's Call Recorder for Skype is what we used. I've experimented with Riverside.fm. I still have a subscription to them. And now we've got Ecamm Live. But there's always issues. But you guys never saw them. You didn't know that we had issues. Because all you ever heard was the final recording. And you still get that. If you subscribe to the podcast, you still get the final recording. But by streaming this process live on YouTube, you really get to see all the warts and all. And I know it doesn't make for super compelling. It doesn't make for super compelling YouTube watching, but it is fun, and I think people get to enjoy the warts and all.
Yeah, it does
stuff.
not. I don't understand. It went so good last time. I logged myself out of my other account because I'm using a separate account with nothing, basically, just so I thought, it worked so well last time that I just thought there'd be no problem. So I did that. Plus, I also took out my AirPods because that was the other thing last time I had done too, or I think it just kind of happened. And we had a pretty much flawless time of it. So,
yeah, well, that's what I was trying to indicate to you by pointing that, because last time I had no problem seeing your video. I had no problem hearing you, but you couldn't hear me just now.
No, you froze. You just froze.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We both froze.
Oh, you were coming through fine.
Yeah. See, I had no idea. So I just, yeah. And I was trying to wait for it to see if it would come back, but it never did. So I just...
Well, here is what we're up against. Speaking of warts and all, I'm going to show you this right now. This is, I don't know that this is going to necessarily cause problems, but can you see that? This
Yes, I did say
that's the
yeah.
current air temperature, and
Yeah.
the here's the feels like minus
Oh my
29.
gosh. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how that's going to affect internet connectivity.
Everything.
Or everything. I am going to
Right.
be literally a micsicle by the time we're done with this recording. It is so cold in my
Oh,
little
shoot.
cave down here.
Oh, come
As
on. What the heck? All right, it just froze again.
yeah, and yet you're coming through. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Now I can hear you. Now it went back. Yeah.
Okay.
So it must have known that you that you just made fun of it with the cold, and now your internet's going to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's -6. I think where Tracy's dad is in Lake Mills. How much snow did you guys get?
Not much. We didn't get as much as predicted. We got maybe just a few inches, but it's
Yeah.
blowing now, and that's drifting and getting over the roads, and yeah, it's
Oh.
nasty out. It's nasty.
Yeah, and this isn't really December weather. This is more January, February weather, if anything. It's like...
Wait a second. Put that left
What?
wrist up.
With the watch or the band?
No, the watch.
Yeah. Oh, the watch.
When did
Oh,
you get
you know
that?
what? I've actually had for some reason, I thought now my side is frozen, but your side's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I ordered it, I guess a few days after it came out. So, or after the whatever. So I couldn't, I wouldn't have gotten the 8 because I didn't think the 8 really had anything that, I didn't already have on the 7. But then they came out with this, and I thought, yeah. So
I saw one in the wild for the very
it's
first
been a great
time.
watch.
Yeah, I saw one in the wild for the first time about a week ago, and I don't think the guy realized that I was kind of like fawning over it. I said, "Oh wow, you got one of the new Watch Ultras," and he's like, "Oh, the watch? Yeah, I just got it. It's nice." And he went on his way. Like, oh, okay, cool. So,
Still freezing up. What is
the bandwidth on my end is looking good. The bandwidth on my end is looking good. Yeah. So you can't hear me, I assume. Yeah. So
shoot? All right.
He's gone. This has really got to be an issue on his end. I don't know why these earbuds make my ears itch. It's got to be an issue on his end. Let's see if he'll rejoin automatically. Yeah.
Yet I had to quit and come back. I had to do it manually. I couldn't. I don't know what's going on.
Well, I've been watching bandwidth on my end, and it's great. I mean, I have a nice little bandwidth monitor that comes with Ecamm Live, and it's showing me, it's showing me a nice clean connection. I'm not exceeding more than 3.5 megabits per second.
So, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, my average
I
is
just
3.3. And then I went over to YouTube and I pulled up the live stream and I'm coming through fine. It
okay.
appears to be something, you were pixelated and not coming through, so I don't know.
Yeah. I You froze kind of like just when you were telling the story on the watch, and then all of a sudden now I just froze again. Um, and you froze too. And so my just looking at whatever processes are using a network, it Google Chrome. Okay, so oh no, it's this NS URL session ID that was using a lot of bandwidth, and then when we froze it, see now it's starting to come back. Okay, so that's the guy that somehow is getting. So the upload, yeah, no, it's not coming back. All right.
Let's try something.
So I wonder, it's NSURL session ID or session D, excuse me, not ID, session D. And the upload was, like I said, in the megabits or megabytes per second. And same thing with, I just wonder, God, is it not is it Spectrum? Are they doing something?
Now,
It's really annoying.
I just made a change in Ecamm. I don't know if you're going to see the change happen. Oh, and he's disconnected.
Okay. Did you hear me last time?
You
Or did
said
it
something about
freeze?
Spectrum, and then you disconnected.
Yeah. So that NSURL session D.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, oh, maybe that's not it. I don't know. There's Google Chrome, and that's using so many kilobytes per second. But then this other one was using it quite a bit more. So I'm trying to like Creative Cloud. Why is that even running? Because none of this stuff should be open. I should
I
go
think it's
into
set up as a system service.
really even okay. Even if I don't, because like I said, I'm using a different user that I guess Creative Cloud's probably an application that goes for all users. But
So NSURL session ID is the process that is used by iCloud to sync your iCloud drive and photos, contacts, etc. between your machines and the iCloud server.
Would you say? You broke up.
NSURL session ID is for iCloud.
Okay. So maybe that was like hogging up bandwidth or something. I'm just quitting all the Creative Cloud stuff. I was just looking for anything else too. Because Google Chrome Helper Renderer. I can't tell if you're frozen now or if you're just contemplating.
Contemplating.
I guess you're frozen. Man alive. Okay. Well, I guess what I could do is just listen to you talk. Maybe.
Well,
I could always send you a message.
yeah, I made a change that you should only be seeing me now and not seeing the program.
Yeah, I do just see you.
Yeah. So that's one change I made, but I don't think that's it.
No, I don't think that's it either. Because you still froze. Because you did it before this last time. Now that you froze too. So.
Yep.
Unless maybe I should just relaunch Chrome if this happens again. Maybe because when I relogged on as this user, Chrome was already up and running from the last time, and the link was there. I mean, I did refresh the page, but who knows? Maybe that was enough to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Well, we're still going now, so maybe it'll work. I don't know. I think this is as long as we've lasted. I was trying to think. Yeah. We're 20 minutes into it. I think this is about as long as we've lasted.
60 seconds. Woo!
60. We made the 60-second mark. Oh, that's so annoying. Oh, I was just trying to think. I can't think of, because our first two podcasts, I think, went off without a hitch.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, pretty close. And then I just can't think of any changes. I mean, and certainly not any changes that now that let's see. Did we have Ventura then?
No.
Was Ventura?
No.
Or have we installed that since our first two?
Yep.
Podcasts? Maybe that's the problem. Maybe
that came out in October.
October, yeah. I can't remember now, but I was going to say maybe, who knows, maybe that was well, we're still going. So just don't show my face and we'll be good. It's probably too much for the internet to handle. I've told you I've got a face for radio, so that's probably what it is. It's bringing down the internet.
So, yeah, you can't see me switching now.
No, I can't see you switching, so
like
that's okay.
Yeah, we're sending out us side by side right now. So did you end up relaunching Chrome? Is that what you did?
No, I didn't. I was going to do that if this didn't work, but so far this is working. So,
all right. Well,
let's leave it.
Do we want to try it?
Let's try it.
All right. 2310. oh boy. Okay. Well, here we go then, my friend. Do you remember what we're talking about? No, don't say.
I forgot completely now.
All right.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Our essential apps, right?
Essential apps. Well, then we better get started since we just told everybody what the topic is.
I know.
Here we go. It's for Mac Guys Only, episode number 401 for December 23rd, 2022. Essential Apps, A New Hope. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Mac Guys Only, the show for the Mac community, where we share our thoughts and opinions on current Mac news and events. And joining me to talk Essential Apps on this, our final show of 2022, is my For Mac Guys Only co-host, Eric Erickson. Happy New Year, Eric.
Yes, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays, all that to you, Mike. I was going to say A New Hope. You should have the titles, scrolling across like Star Wars.
Every time we record, you come up with something new and weird for me to do. I don't know if anyone listened to the end of last time, but I actually did Carol of the Mac Startup Chimes at the very end of last episode.
Yes, that was awesome.
So now you've tasked me with creating the scrolling graphics from Star Wars.
Right, exactly.
Which actually is a simple plugin for Final Cut, but
Yeah. Actually, they might even have it built in. I think iMovie even has it.
Is it really
built in? But yeah, it's pretty slick. Yeah.
Oh man. And of course, because we are streaming live to YouTube, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat room too. So if you are joining us live and you have questions or comments as we move along, be sure to preface it with a Q or the word question so that we can kind of keep an eye out for it and we'll try to address it. All right. Well, Eric, as our For Mac Eyes Only gears start turning again, we seem to be reaching into the archives and pulling out a few favorites. Not only our favorites, but listener favorites too. And Essential Apps is one of those shows that for a long time we were doing annually, more or less annually. But it's been a while. It's been a while since we tackled one of these. In fact, our last official Essential App show was, do you know? Are you ready for this?
No.
2015.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, we did do a variation of it that we called Must-Have Mac Apps. And we did that in 2018, almost exactly 4 years ago to the day. We're 5 days off from when we did Must-Have Mac Apps. Yeah.
Interesting. I would have thought 2018, actually. So when you said 2015, I was, Yeah,
2015 was our 9th annual Essential Apps. And I think even then we said more or less annual.
More or less annual. Probably.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as you and I look back at favorite topics, the one that kept coming up is Essential Apps. And I think it's one of our favorites. I know it's one of my favorites. And since it's been a while, I thought maybe we should explain what makes an app essential. And why those apps are on the list and why you should consider loading them. And by you, I mean you folks listening right now. Well, to me, an essential app is one that I find myself turning to again and again and again, usually several times a day. It's an app that is so ingrained into my Mac using life that if I ever find myself loading a brand new Mac, or more often what happens, find myself sitting at someone else's Mac, I notice it missing right away, and often find myself itching to load it before I can do anything else. So these are apps that, to me, feel like they really should be native to the Mac. And yes, I'll admit, I often tease our friend Brian that many of these apps that are apps that I often categorize as one-trick pony apps. But the tricks that these ponies can do just make my Mac using life easier. So, for our 10th edition of the Increasingly Inaccurately Named annual list of essential apps, we're going to try to pick apps that meet those criteria. Apps that can help not only the experienced Mac user, but also apps that can make the Mac computing life of someone new to the Mac a bit easier. And no matter your experience level, I hope that they make your life easier too. Now, we mentioned this just a moment ago, Eric. Our last apps show, Must-Have Mac Apps, I believe that was actually your idea. And if I remember correctly, the concept was not to list apps that we think all Mac users should use, but specifically apps that you and I use on a regular basis.
Yeah. I think that's a good, and really, by extension, you could probably say other users could, but I think it's, stuff that we use, because there are probably a number of apps that you could say all users should use, or even do use and rely upon. I mean, you take the web browser. I don't think there's probably any app that you can say that is less, you say, indispensable or more indispensable than that. It's, but yet that's not something that most people think of in whatever. So I think that's why we kind of thought that.
And and I have a few bonus apps on my list this year that are just as you described. They're essential apps. They're apps that I think everybody should have on their Mac, but they're not necessarily apps that make the list. And Mozilla Firefox is one of them. Now, we spent quite a lot of an episode recently where we talked about Firefox, talked about its privacy, talked about its security. So if anyone's interested, you can just kind of go back through the show notes or listen to that episode again. And I'll tell you I guess it's a rerun. I'll tell you in that rerun why you should probably be using Firefox. And I do think it's absolutely an essential app for most users. But it's not necessarily what I wanted to share today on this edition of Essential Apps. But I think to your point, Eric, this episode's list is going to be a bit of both, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I certainly think so.
Yeah. So why don't we start with you? What is the first essential must-have app on your list this year?
Well, it's probably the same one that's been on the list every single year, and it's the one that I always think of again, kind of like you had said when you are setting up a new Mac or using somebody else's. It's really the first one that I run into that I realize I don't have or need to put on. That I'm, and also too, there's to this extent some of the other apps on the list, including this one. If I try to go out, you know some time without using them or adding them to the Mac, I eventually add them anyway because I can't, I just think, well, I can't live without them, because usually when I get a new Mac, it's always time for me to kind of rethink and say, okay, how many of these things do I actually need running in the background and using up resources? Maybe it would just be better to not install it, and then I end up doing it anyway. But the first app on my list is LaunchBar, which I would also say anything that kind of falls into that category, which another big one is Alfred. I think there might be one or two others out there as well. But Alfred is really popular, and I almost probably see that more than LaunchBar. And in fact, I think LaunchBar is made by OBDev or Objective Development.
Objective Development.
And
Yep.
and they're also the makers of Little Snitch, which you could also say is a essential app. But they seem to be a little bit more. I mean, they're definitely updating LaunchBar, but they have not really come out with a major point update since like 2014. So,
oh, really?
They're keeping it working and they're keeping it updated and stuff. There's just some things in there that I thought maybe by now that they would have in there that they haven't. But what keeps me, I've tried out Alfred, but what keeps me using LaunchBar is that it's so fast. It's really designed and kind of thought from the ground up or built from the ground up to take as few keystrokes as possible. Where I found when I use Alfred, I end up having to do more to accomplish the same thing. But LaunchBar simply is well, you can almost think of it as like Spotlight and steroids. If you've used Spotlight, LaunchBar looks very similar. And in fact, I've always kind of teased Apple, saying that Spotlight it's almost like they have LaunchBar envy because they've even made it look like LaunchBar and do some of the same things. Obviously, LaunchBar doesn't have the deep indexing and scanning capabilities that Spotlight does, but you can find a lot of stuff really quick and actually faster. Not to mention, you can just do a lot of things. Essentially, you can find things with it and then act on them. You can find a file and then you can hit the tab key and say, okay, let's say it's an image. You can say, open this up in Pixelmator, or open this up in Photoshop, or resize this image, or do whatever. And there's just all kinds of things you can do. At a basic level, it's an app launcher and file finder and stuff like that. But it goes way beyond that. And it's just, like I said, it's one of those things where Spotlight is a pretty decent substitute. So if I'm using somebody else's Mac, I use that and I rely on that. And I think my daughter actually uses Spotlight to that extent too. And it does work pretty good. But like I said, LaunchBar is just kind of a step up, and it's just makes things easier for me.
It's interesting that you said that Apple has a little bit of LaunchBar envy,
Envy.
because so many of the features that are coming to Spotlight have been features that you and others have mentioned are the features you love the most about LaunchBar when we've done these
Yeah.
essential apps episodes in the past. And one that comes to mind is the launching applications with abbreviated names. So, for example,
Yes.
if you want
Yep.
to launch Microsoft Word, you type in MW or something like
Right.
that. And that's
Right. Yep.
something that Spotlight has adopted. You can actually
Right.
use that same trick in Spotlight now when you want to launch
Yeah.
an app. And the other thing is, and you mentioned this, and this is something that I think Spotlight is actually getting worse at, quite frankly, and that is searching for something, finding a document, and then being able to act on it in a certain way. And
Right.
there used to be, it seems to me, there used to be better functionality for acting on a search result in Spotlight in the past, and that it's not quite as good as it used to be. And
Yeah.
that seems to come about when Apple, and again, you mentioned this too, when Apple mimicked the look of LaunchBar by moving Spotlight to the center of the screen, when they kind of rewrote Spotlight. I don't know if
Right.
they rewrote it. I actually don't know if that's accurate. I don't know that they rewrote Spotlight, but they certainly changed the interface for it.
Yeah.
And I will actually, that's one of the first things I do on every new Mac is I move the Spotlight window to the top right of the screen. It's just, that's where it belongs. Stop moving
That's
it
where
to
it
the
should be.
center.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of came about when they reimagined the Spotlight interface, that some of the actions you can take on search results, I don't, it just doesn't feel as rich as it used to be.
No. In fact, I think, and they just recently brought this back. I think the original Spotlight, I wanted to say you could do quick look. Maybe you couldn't. Maybe you never could.
Yes, you could.
You could. You could always do that in LaunchBar, but I mean, since they've added it, but it wasn't there because we had mentioned that because we had saw that as a feature in Ventura, and we are like, wasn't could you already do that?
Could,
And you
yeah,
couldn't. If you hit the space bar, it just went. It added another space to whatever you were searching,
yeah.
and it didn't actually quick look. And now I think they've tied it in where it'll do that. But I do remember, at least I think I remember Spotlight doing that sort of thing. So that's another
Yeah.
example of what you're talking about, where you act on something that you found, or
Yeah.
make it easier to, or you're even, you could see a file's path a lot easier. I think you just held down the command key, and you can still do that, I think, but it's a little bit more hidden or not quite as obvious. So
You,
it's
certain things that used to work really smoothly, like holding down command and clicking on a file and having a Finder window open to
yes.
that file's location, don't seem to work quite as well as they used
Well,
to.
yeah, they don't. In fact, I was getting frustrated with that the other day.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, what am I not doing here? And I was, in that case, I think I was holding down the command key and hitting the enter key,
Mm.
which is the same deal. It's supposed to take you to the file, not open it.
Not open it. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's
And
often my reason for searching for something is not to open it, but to find it, to find
yeah,
where it is. Where is it on my Mac? And so I
right,
want it to open in a Finder window. I don't want it to open in the app that created it.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Or you maybe just want to copy it or whatever. Something like you said, you don't want to open it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does LaunchBar work with Quick Look?
But it's pretty much just, when you type in, again, if you start typing in text, it doesn't really, LaunchPad just capitalizes every letter that you type in, and there's no
Mm.
spaces. So if you want to, let's say you have a picture of something, Matterhorn, you start typing TT or whatever, maybe TTH, and it'll find it. And then you just hit the space bar and it'll pop up the quick look. It'll pop up a picture of the Matterhorn if you've got it, if you've got it on your computer someplace. So it will essentially quick look anything that quick look can do. It doesn't enhance quick look any, but it utilizes it. And then you can scroll down to, you can hit the arrow key up and down and it'll change. Let's say if you got a folder full of images, it'll quick look each image as you arrow it down or arrow it up or whatever. It's stuff like that.
And LaunchBar is more than just an app launcher, right? It will
Yeah.
search your Mac just like Spotlight will.
Yeah, it's not quite as deep as Spotlight. It's got a built-in, you can use a keyboard shortcut to activate Spotlight essentially within LaunchBar and then type in whatever you want. And it makes some of that searching a little bit easier too, but it quickly indexes a lot of stuff so that it doesn't, like I said, it's not going to like search for text within a document. Let's say you have a Word document that you're talking about some sort of chemistry and there's, words in there that are in there and aren't in anywhere else. You can't remember the name of the document, but you could type that in Spotlight and it'll find it, where LaunchBar won't do that, but it'll find the document or the folder or whatever. But there's other stuff you can select multiple things within LaunchBar and then send them over to, let's say, resize an image, or I utilized that one before, or copy it or move it, or like if you want to move files from one location to another, you can select them, hit tab, you type in the destination where you want to move them to, and it'll give you the option of moving the files, copying the files, creating an absolute link to the files, creating an alias, or creating a hard link. I think symbolic link is in there too. So it opens up a whole bunch of features that just kind of make it easier just to do a lot of things within a few keystrokes rather than selecting a whole bunch of files and then going there and doing that.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know, and LaunchBar is one of our classic essential apps. I know we've mentioned
It is. It is a classic.
times, and there's a few others in the list here too. Now, I tried to. That's a great first pick, and from my first pick, what I tried to do is I just went through my menu bar. I went through my menu bar and I went through my app folder and just said, which of these things that are not unique to my workflow. There are definitely some things in here that are unique to my workflow, and
right.
they're not necessarily essential to everybody, but they're essential to me. But which of these things might be useful to everybody who uses a Mac? And one of the apps that I'm a longtime fan of is FantastiCal. I love FantastiCal. I love version 1 of FantastiCal. And the reason I love version 1 is because I'm a fan of so many of the built-in apps on the Mac. The trifecta of calendar and contacts and notes. And, well, it's more than a trifecta, isn't it? Calendar, contact, notes, reminders, even mail, if you use Apple Mail. All those things work so well together. And I happen to think the calendar is a pretty nifty app. It works well. It comes with the Mac. It's certainly no frills, but it works with every service I need it to work with, and it allows me to quickly, at a glance, view my calendars. I can see them by color. I can see different services, whether it's Google or Apple or what have you. So it works really, really well. And I like its natural language input. That also works well. And that's something that FantastiCal has always offered too. But the reason I always loaded FantastiCal, which is not my pick, by the way. That's not my pick. No. The reason I always loaded FantastiCal 1 is for that nifty little menu bar calendar. That's one thing that Apple's calendar does not have. I like being able, without launching the full calendar app, I like being able to just click a button on my menu bar and see what's going on, and not have to launch the full app. Just leave that little thing running. Well, with FantastiCal 2, they upped the game. To their credit, they created a full-on robot calendaring system. It's fantastic. It's got reminders in it. It's got the calendar. It's got all these fantastic bells and whistles. And yes, it does still have the menu bar app. And while they were doing that, another popular calendaring app called PCalc also created a better and better menu bar app. And PCalc's menu bar app is also great. However, I don't need a full second calendaring system. I have one. I have Apple Calendar. I don't need another one. And yet
Right.
PCalc and FantastiCal both provide that. Well, I was looking around, and I came across my pick. So yes, my pick is not FantastiCal, although it's great. My pick is not PCalc, although it's great. My pick is a tiny little free app from a developer called Mowgli. That's Mowglii, and it is called ItsyCal. 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 And it does one thing, and it does one thing really, really well. ItsyCal is a tiny menu bar calendar. That's it. That's all it does.
That's awesome.
It has a dark mode. You can do week numbers. You can have a customizable clock replacement with it. And it does nothing other than, here, I'm going to pull it up right now. It does nothing other than pull up my active calendars. That's it.
Right.
And that's all I want. That's all I want.
Yeah.
And not only is ItsyCal tiny and simple, but it's free. I love it. That is my first pick. And of course, along with LaunchBar, we'll have a link to ItsyCal in the show notes. So that's it, Eric. That's my first pick. Super simple, but I love it.
Yeah, I would have pegged you as a FantastiCal user because I knew you used it.
I do.
And for some reason, I thought you still did. So, and what you're talking about with the menu bar, that's really what put FantastiCal on the map, was that little menu bar calendar app and their natural language input. And they kind of, and actually it was a Mac app before it was any on iOS or anything else. It was just this little menu bar app that dropped down and had a list of, kind of the agenda list. And like I said, the natural language input, and that's what made it famous. And then of course now they've added on all this other stuff, which I have to say I'm a big FantastiCal user. However, and we do have the family because Tracy really likes it as well. So, but I will have to check out this ItsyCal because that sounds really cool. I mean, there's also, well, actually, that's kind of my next pick, so I'll leave that. But anyway, but that does sound really, really good. And like you said, Apple's calendar is really good and maybe no frills, but it doesn't leave a lot to be desired. I mean, it has pretty much all of the important stuff that you want. Plus, it's easy to use and it's reliable, and it works with all the surfaces, like you said.
Works with all the services, very reliable, integrated with the system, syncs well with the phone, no extra cost. Although I will admit, calendar on iOS stinks. I don't like it. I do like FantastiCal on iOS, and
I do too.
To answer your question, yes, I am a FantastiCal user. I also have it running on my Mac. It's on the menu bar next to ItsyCal, and on my desktop Mac, I have ItsyCal, I have FantastiCal, and I have PCalc.
That's awesome.
So I actually have all three. They're kind of auditioning against each other to determine which is going to be my ultimate final menu bar calendaring app. And quite frankly, for the reason you mentioned, FantastiCal is the one I do turn to more often than not because of its natural language input. ItsyCal will let you add events. It will, let's see, it will. Yeah, so you can click a button and pop open calendar. I wanted to make sure of that before I said it. So you can click a little button, it'll pop open calendar. It will pop open. No, it won't pop open reminders. And you can add events, but it does not to my knowledge, does not have natural language because it does. Here, I'll test it right now. Um, Test event next Tuesday.
Now,
See, it doesn't update anything when I do next Tuesday. It just keeps it the same. Whereas if I typed
okay,
in test event next Tuesday in FantastiCal, it knows.
it
It
knows.
knows to
Yeah,
go to the next Tuesday,
yeah,
and then you continue on at 10 a.m. or whatnot. And that is
yeah,
really the main thing that keeps FantastiCal on my Macs.
yeah.
Um,
That works
yeah,
extremely well.
I do not ever use the FantastiCal desktop application. I don't use it.
Oh, that yeah,
The
big.
the
I
full
do
calendar.
occasionally.
When I want to
Yeah,
see a full calendar, I open up Apple's calendar.
yeah,
So even though they introduced that, even though they brought all these great features, the main reason I have Fantastical is for the menu bar app. That's it.
yeah, yeah. Which makes sense. And like you said, the iOS app too. I kind of forgot. I use that exclusively on iOS. I don't. I'm like you. I don't really care for the Apple's calendar.
I
I
don't like
just
Apple's
like the
calendar.
layout and all of that with Fantastical, and so I use that, and that works extremely well.
If, I will say that if you are a Gmail or Google Workspace user, Google's iOS app for calendar is really good.
Hmm.
I do not believe, I could be wrong on this because it's not my daily calendar. Fantastical is my daily calendar on iOS, but I do believe it is only for Google accounts. You cannot say, for example,
Oh,
open up an Office 365 calendar or Outlook calendar with
calendar.
it. I do not believe you
Right.
can do that. I could
Interesting.
be
Okay.
wrong, and someone can send an email and correct me on that. But yeah, Google Calendar is great if you are a Google Workspace or a Gmail user, and it's got that nice full screen month view of the calendar, and I just like the way they do it. Plus, they put
Yeah,
little as you put events in there, they put little graphics on them to represent the events that you have on there, which is cute.
it's cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, as far as iOS calendar, Fantastical is my go-to. But menu bar calendars, I'm looking more and more at ItsyCal and enjoying it, and you can't beat the cost.
No, no,
Yep.
free is never. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
No, and that's a pretty cool deal. I'm definitely going to check that out because I'm always interested in that stuff anyway, and it's always neat when somebody comes out with something new. I'm definitely I don't want to say an app junkie, but I do like trying out different stuff. So
Yeah, and I'll have a link. Again, I said it's Mowgli, Mowglii. So it's Mowgli.com and ItsyCal. They also have another app called Sync, SNK. And oh, no, it's Snake. I'm sorry, it's not Sync, it's Snake, SNK, Snake. And it's that, the classic games of Snake where
oh yeah,
the
yeah,
snake keeps getting longer and longer and you have to avoid
yeah.
it. That's what it is. Pretty
Oh
cool.
sweet.
Yeah.
That's I forgot about that game. Oh, that's
Oh.
awesome.
All right, Eric, what is your second pick?
The next one, okay. It actually, and I was thinking about this, and I had it a little bit further down, but now talking about this, I think it is probably more of an app I use even more, and that is iStat menus.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's from Bajango, and you've probably seen it. It's usually sometimes in a bundle thing that you can get a hold of. I don't remember exactly how I got it, but it's something that I have really come to rely on, and just I don't know. I'm one of these. Obviously, I'm a geek, so I like. And to me, it's kind of like gauges in your car.
Mm-hmm.
You can monitor, what's using up a bunch of your RAM. If things start going, a little haywire, you can see, oh, well, this process is eating up CPU, or this process is, hogging up all the memory. It's a real quick way to see, where things are going, as well as hard drive space or storage space and network. connections, and they've kind of got it down to real science and art. I mean, you can have these different little graphics that show up in the menu bar, and you can combine them so that it doesn't take up too much space, so that they show all in one pull down, and you can easily go from one thing to the next. And one of the things that they have is you can also use it to show the time as well as the date, but also they have a calendar right within there. It's kind of on the same vein as ItsyCal or Fantastical, where it shows it's like a menu bar calendar,
Hmm.
and it actually does a really good job of showing everything. And the only thing, I don't think you can add events through it. Maybe I think it's display only. And another thing, part of that is they have with the latest editions is a weather, and I think it gets it's weather information from AccuWeather. I want to say
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I think that depending upon how often you have an update, it costs so much a year. It's nothing outrageous. It might be like $15 a year or whatever. But it shows, a lot of weather information, plus all kinds of astronomical events, including like when the space station will go over, or the ISS, or the moon phases, the sunset, sunrise, and all that stuff. And it's pretty it's pretty nice. I mean, like I said, it gives you a wealth of information, and it's a one time purchase. I mean, outside
Oh,
of I
really?
think having to pay for weather updates, it's not a subscription. And it works really really well. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
something that I don't. I apparently can't live without, because again, it's one of those things I install on a new Mac within probably the first week of owning it, and I don't wait too long. So one of the things I'll say with the M1 chip now, or Apple Silicon, they used to have a lot of sensors that they monitored, within the Intel. I think it required a separate little Intel app or whatever. But you could monitor fan speeds as well as, well, that's not, but monitor all these internal temperatures, including fan speeds and all that stuff. Where with the M1 now, that isn't really available. A lot of these extra sensors and the temp and all that stuff for the processor, of course, the fans on on my M1 Max never really kick on, so I don't really. It used to be I'd hear the fans kick on, and I'd go up to iStat menus and okay, what's going on, And
Right.
actually, you could control the fans too. I want to think if I remember that right. Yeah, within iStat, you could actually crank them up or turn them down and stuff as well, which I didn't really mess around with. But so that was another neat thing. Apple, I don't think allows as much control or as much information as what they've done in the past or what Intel does, but it's still, like I said, you can still see what's eating up your CPU or your graphics, your GPU, and as well as your RAM memory for both graphics and for regular RAM and storage space and everything. So it is pretty slick.
I used to have an iStat. I don't know if it was called iStat menus, but it was a dashboard widget.
Yes, they have a dash. Well, they used to have a dashboard. I
They used
think
to have a
they
dashboard
still have a
widget.
notification center widget too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
was, you're right. Every time you would hear those fans go off, you'd be like, all right, what's going on now? But
yeah.
that's not really a thing anymore with the M1. I,
No,
I, I wish I was sitting at my other desktop because I did purchase a fan control app. There was something going on, and I wanted to make sure that they were working correctly. And I did purchase one. And it's a really nifty little, again, one trick pony app. And I can't recall the name, and I don't want to be launching all this stuff on my computer while we're live streaming here. But um,
yeah,
yeah, that it sounds like iStat menus is really becoming kind of that Swiss Army knife. It's no longer that one trick
it,
pony of here's what's going on your Mac. It's here's what's going on your Mac, and oh, by the way, here's your calendar, here's the
right,
fan control, here's the
right,
weather, here's
yeah,
all this stuff. And it's interesting that you mentioned weather and the cost of that, because that's the same thing with Fantastical and the same thing with BusyCal is your subscription to both of those is what pays for the extended forecast weather that you get within the calendars. So, you don't really realize, or you don't think about how much this stuff costs. And yet these developers are incorporating these features, and it's great, but they're running up an invoice behind the scenes there, and they need to cover those costs. Otherwise, these apps cease to exist. So this is a good example of where a subscription, whether it's a subscription to the weather or what have you in iStat menus, or it's a subscription to FantastiCal or BusyCal, that's an example where let me try that again. That's an example where those subscription dollars are really not just lining the pockets of the developer, which I don't think they ever really are, but providing a valuable service then in return to you as the user. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's
they
awesome.
do a good job of I don't know if Fantastical does this, but iStat Menus definitely does. And they basically kind of offer different tiers. I think there's another weather app that does something similar, but if you need it updated every 10 minutes, it costs this much, versus if you can handle it every half hour, it costs this much. And if you don't mind it every hour or a few hours, it costs this, so there's different price levels too. So it doesn't, but even, like I said, even every 5-10 minutes isn't really that expensive. So
No, not at all. Oh, that's great.
worth
Yeah. I do not use iStat menus on a regular basis. I do believe I have a license for it. I believe I purchased a license.
You
But
probably do, especially if you bought enough bundles.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Probably in one of those.
Yep. Cool. Very cool. Well, my next pick is something that I know I've mentioned in the Essential Apps list many, many times in the past. It is a clipboard manager. It's something I am super surprised Apple has not yet baked into Mac OS. But this particular clipboard manager is a very simple one. I don't need a clipboard manager that remembers the images I've copied, that remembers all the designs of web pages I've copied and all that kind of stuff. I need a clipboard manager that just remembers text, remembers passwords, remembers URLs, things like that, even paragraphs of text. But I don't need all the formatting to come along with it. I just need that text, And I didn't really realize until I started looking into it that this clipboard manager, which is called Jumpcut, by the way, it's called Jumpcut. This clipboard manager actually is somewhat positioned as a clipboard manager for developers. And I didn't really realize that, I guess. They got the name from editing. If you edit video, there are jump cuts that you make, right? And the icon for it is scissors. So there is some kind of, some kind of history to both the naming and the design of the app. But it's a very simple app. One of the things I like about it is that you can control how much history you want to have it remember. I'm actually pretty generous with it. I have mine set to remember 99 items in history. And then in the drop-down menu, again, it's a menu bar app. In the drop-down menu, I have it display 40. But you can have it remember, 50 and display 10 or whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing is that it also has a bezel function so that when you press a hotkey, and I actually don't do this. I use the menu bar app all the time. But you can press a hotkey. You can determine what the hotkeys are. By default, it's Control Option V, and the bezel on screen will show you the contents of past clips so that you can quickly pick them from there. Some of the things that are really nifty about it that they've added in recent years, Jumpcut was kind of stagnant for a while, and then when the whole 64-bit thing came along, they leapt back into action again and have been developing it pretty actively since. In fact, the most recent version of it I'm seeing now is May 2022. Um, but some of the things that they've added in recent years include the ability to ignore large clippings. So if you clip a lot of
Mhm.
stuff and you don't want to have that memorized. But more importantly, there's a checkbox to ignore confidential clipping types. So you can
Oh, like
actually tell
password.
it don't remember passwords. If it's in a
Yeah.
password field, don't remember that. And then, of course, if you are using a password manager, the password managers often clear the clipboard anyway.
Yeah.
And what I
Yeah.
found is that 1Password will only clear the password that you copied from 1Password. The rest of your
Oh,
clipboard is retained in Jumpcut. So
retain.
I
Right.
really like that. And then for privacy reasons, you can also tell it never save clippings to disk, so that there's no historical record of it on your storage drive.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you can control the status bar icon, what you want it to look like, how you want the bezel text to be aligned. You can hide the menu bar icon. And then, of course, there's the usual launch at login and automatically check for updates. This is an app that's released on GitHub. It's a free open source app.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's been around, gosh, Jumpcut, it's been around, I think, as almost as long as we've been doing for Mac Eyes Only. I want to say it's been around for around 15 years or so. So it's got a lot of history to it, and the developers are actively working on it again. So I'm really excited about that. And I don't know what else to say about it other than it's a really nice, simple, plain text clipboard manager. And I will tell you, this is the thing I notice missing on a
Oh,
Mac that doesn't have it. In fact, I was going to point out that it does have a little issue with launching at login. Even though there's a checkbox for it, I seem to have to go into the, where you go in and into the user and you say, login apps. I seem to
right.
have to drag it into that login apps despite the checkbox to get it to launch reliably. But when it fails to launch, oh my gosh, I notice right away. And of course, when it's not launched, it doesn't remember all that stuff. So I may not notice right
Oh,
away that it hasn't
yeah.
launched. And I go to use it. I'm like, oh gosh darn it. I missed those 10 clippings I just did.
Yeah.
But it's very
Yeah.
useful for things like remembering URLs and stuff because you can just clip, 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 and then they're all there in
Yep.
that drop down menu, and you can stick them back into wherever you need to put them later and not have to worry about doing it one at a time. I know there are other clipboard managers. I know that there are several out there that will, like I said, retain graphics, will retain formatting, will retain all that stuff. I don't need any of that. I don't want any of that. I just want basic
Tech.
clipboard management, and Jumpcut does the job. Now, for folks, I know there are some folks who aren't too keen on open source or whatnot. I will say that when Jumpcut wasn't being regularly updated, I found a fork of it in the Mac App Store. The fork is called Flycut. It is also open source. You can also download it on GitHub if you want, but it's also available in the Mac App Store. So if you are interested in, and one thing that Flycut will do that Jumpcut does not do is sync the clipboard. So if that's a feature that you want,
Oh,
cool.
that's nice.
Flycut will do that for you. I haven't used it in quite some time. I believe it might use Dropbox for syncing it.
Okay.
I can't remember, honestly. Um, but if you're looking for something that, has that Apple stamp of approval on it without downloading from GitHub,
Right.
you can certainly get it from the Mac App Store. It's called Flycut, and I'll put a link to that as an alternative in the show notes as well. So there you go. That is my next pick. I guess that's my second pick.
It's your second, yeah.
It's
And
Jumpcut.
you brought up a really interesting one, and one I hadn't thought of, but I rely on just as much as anything else is clipboard managers. And like you said, I wish Apple would get on board and put one in, not just in the Mac, but also on the iPhone. I
Mm,
would
hmm
love that. And I do use, actually, LaunchBar has its own clipboard manager, and it does retain like everything, which I do end up using. And I think you can have it retain it for up to a week. But I even I'll even go back and like if for things that aren't text, it'll kind of treat them. It'll say like, for instance, if I'm editing in Final Cut Pro, it'll say Final Cut Pro object, and it won't say anything more than that. But I'll know that okay, that's two backs, so it's probably this, and then I'll paste it using LaunchBar, the clipboard manager within LaunchBar. But uh, no, I love clipboard managers, and I just use them all the time. And in fact, in the early days of the iPhone, when they had this task finishing thing as part of their multitasking, um, I think it was the makers of Tweetbot. Um, I don't remember what it was
Yes,
called. Maybe it was
Clipbot.
called
It wasn't it
Pastebot.
called Clipbot or something?
Clipbot, yeah, it could have been Clip. Yeah. Anyway, they when you'd copy something, it would after you left Clipbot, it would continue running for 10 minutes, and it would uh, store that. It would act as a clipboard manager in the background. But then Apple got rid of that whole task finishing thing with their background refresh, and so that kind of just went away with that as well. So I really wish they would have something though, because I do really utilize it. Actually, I think it's the same company. I do have a separate clipboard manager called Pastebot, and I use it.
Oh, maybe it was Pastebot.
Yeah, it could have
I
been
called
Pastebot.
Clipbot. Maybe it's Pastebot.
And it has a lot of extra features that, like your standard clipboard managers don't usually have, and including LaunchBar. And you can kind of, for one thing, you can kind of massage the data once you've got it into the clipboard. You can run like a regular expression on it and remove stuff or find stuff. But one of the things that it has is this sequential copy and paste. You can copy like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then paste 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So
Oh,
if you
that's
have
cool.
a bunch of things that you need to copy in order or whatever. And so when I run into that, I use that. And it's one of the reasons I keep it around and running is because of that. But yeah, no, I absolutely love it. So my next pick, actually, this again is a little bit out of order, but I was thinking about it and I utilize this all the time. And it's something made by a company called Organis, which is their German company. And this particular app is called Typinator. And they have several other applications that they make as well, which are really good, including KeyQ, which lists all your shortcuts. Another one that lists all of the, like if you're looking for a particular letter or ASCII, not ASCII, but Unicode character within a certain font, I can't think of, is it
PopChar.
char? But yeah, PopChar, yeah, PopChar, that as well. So they make some really good apps. But Typinator, there are other apps that are very similar, like Text Expander. I think there's something else called Type It For Me.
Yep.
But what it does, and even Apple has a variation of it built into the Mac and to the iPhone, which I use, where you can type in a few letters and it'll expand out a word or a phrase or whatever you want. And it saves a lot of time for me. In fact, I've got a ton of abbreviations for words that I type out. And one of the things where I used to work a long time ago, we used to have to type in notes and stuff, and a lot of it was abbreviations and shorthand. And so I just kind of always remembered that, and I kind of use those still to this day to make it easier to type something, like TT for talk to, or TTG for talking to. It's just weird stuff like that. And so you can put this into Typinator, and it also has a bunch of built-in ones, and some of them are for like just correcting spelling, and other ones are just for making it easier to type in, let's say, different code. Let's say if you do HTML or whatever, and you want to type in a thing for a link, it'll expand all of that out. And the other thing that Typinator has, and I think Text Expander too, is they have where you can kind of build up a form, and you can say, you can add fields and pop-up menus and stuff like that. So if you have to type something that's fairly sophisticated, where you need it to expand out, and you want to, let's say, uh, it's something that you're going to repeat, but things that may change over time. So let's say, you know, you need to know it's Halloween. So you have a pop-up menu for all the holidays, and you can choose Halloween and whatever. And so let's say you can have expand out more than just a word. You can have expand out a paragraph or a whole thing. You could have it, let's say you do up a bunch of HTML for a web page. You can have it output all of that and just type in the stuff that changes. So there's all kinds of uses for it. And one of the things that Text Expander does that, so you can make it easier to type in things that are really complex over and over again. It also takes and outputs dates and other information. So if things change, like I'll type in a few letters and it'll expand out to today's date, or I can have it, let's say, give me Sunday's date or next Wednesday's date or whatever sort of thing. If I'm typing a letter to somebody and or some sort of document and I want to have it do that, I can just type like a 3-letter code and have it expand that out into whatever date I want. And it like I said, it's almost something that you need to see, and it's almost too hard to explain, but it's very slick. And again, it's one of those apps too that doesn't have a subscription. It's just a one-time fee, one-time purchase, and then of course upgrades down the line if there are any. But they're really good about keeping the app up to date and have excellent support, and it's really, really good.
I love Ergonis. In fact, one of my picks is PopChar.
Yeah.
Because this is an app that lives in my menu bar. I don't need it every second of every day, but when I do need it, oh my gosh, this is super essential. And it is, as you described it, I'll just go ahead and talk about mine too, because I want to integrate this with your discussion about Typinator. But when you need to find a special character, yes, I know there's that keyboard menu bar button that you can turn on in macOS, but it is so weak in comparison, because one of the things that in addition to finding that special emoji that is there and you just can't find it, the thing that I use it for all the time is when I need to insert a special character on a website, but I don't know the HTML code for it. Like for example, maybe I do know that the ampersand is wait, what am I thinking? Not ampersand. Copyright symbol.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I do know that the copyright symbol is ampersand copy semicolon. Maybe I do know that, and I know that's what it is. But if I forget, one of the things that PopChar can do is you can tell it, show me HTML codes, and it will show you, like if you want to insert an ampersand, it's ampersand AMP semicolon. Or you want to insert, what's one of the other characters that you have to do all the time, but it doesn't have an equivalent, like a pound sign. On the U.S. keyboard, you're going to get a hash,
right?
Or on, or you'll get a $sign depending on what you type in. But if you want to do a pound sign, you have to do ampersand and then spell out the word pound and a semicolon. Well, if you don't recall those codes, if you don't recall the HTML codes, PopChar will tell you what they are. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff. Or if you just are looking for a special character, you'll be able to tell at a glance if that special character even exists in the font that you're using. Not every font is all inclusive. So
Yep.
sometimes the character that you're looking for just doesn't exist in the font that you are typing in, and you need to change to a different one to get that character. The
Yep.
other thing that I like about it is that you can set favorites. So you can define what your favorite characters are. And I have a rundown of maybe, oh, I don't know, 10, 15 characters that I need to access fairly frequently. Unfortunately, I just pulled it down here. They're not on this Mac, but on my main desktop Mac, if I were to click on the PopChar menu up at the very top is favorites, and you can have that list of favorite special characters that you need
To
or
use
that you
over and
need
over again.
access to over and over again, and they're right up there. But it will also list recent characters and things like that. Additionally, you can search. You can search for special characters. You can search for characters within a particular font or within all the fonts. And then, like I said, the one thing that I tend to use it for fairly frequently is I will choose Apple Color emoji as the font I'm looking for, and then you can search in it and see if the emoji that you're looking for exists. I know you can do that on the iOS keyboard, but when you're working on the Mac and you want to insert a deer and you just don't know
Right.
where it is or where that, what category it's under, there it is. You can search for deer
There
and
it is.
boom, it comes up. Which, by the way, there is no moose. Can you believe there is no moose emoji? That just bugs me to no end.
That's really weird. I thought there was.
There needs to be a moose.
There
But
does need to be a moose. You're
if
right.
if you have emoji that you like to use frequently, again, you can set them as favorites and have them right at the
Yep.
top so that you have quick access to them over and over again. The other thing, of course, is that you can click a little drop down and choose which emoji set you want to use. So I think by default, for some reason, it's emoji 5.0. But as I click down on it right now, you can have up to 14.0 of it. So
Oh wow.
uh,
Wow.
I'm I'm not I'm not really sure the difference, quite honestly. I'm not an emoji savant or anything, so I don't
No.
really know what the difference is between them. I think it's just this character set has more
Yeah. I was guessing
more of the newer
have
ones in
more.
it,
Yeah.
or perhaps the different skin tones and things like that.
Or perhaps a
Um,
moose was actually in one of them and now it's been removed.
oh, it was in one. Yeah,
Was it?
why would they remove the moose? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's odd. Why would they?
Yeah.
When you mentioned that, I'm like, I know I saw a moose. So that's really odd that they removed it.
Now, PopCare will pop down, and once you've selected a character, it will automatically insert it into the app that you're using, and then it disappears.
Yep.
So
Disappears.
it's a sweet little menu bar app that shows up when you need it and disappears when you don't, and it
Yep.
does a fantastic job of that one specialized thing of inserting special characters. Now, Typinator is also from these folks, as you said, and I don't actually use Typinator. I use Type It For Me, and Typinator, like you said, has a lot of features that Type It For Me simply does not have, and one of those is the more advanced variable insertion as you're creating these, like you said, long strings of text. Maybe it's a letter that you type over
Right.
and over, and you want to put the person's name or the date or what have you.
Right.
There's the variable aspects of it that you can put in there, and Type It
Yeah.
For Me has some some
Similar.
things that are similar to it, but not quite as rich
Yeah.
as Typinator. So yeah, Ergonis makes some great software, and Typinator is one of them, and PopCare is another. And
Yeah.
the other one you mentioned was KeyQ.
KeyQ. Yeah.
Now, I don't use KeyQ. Do you use that
I
one?
don't either. I've messed around with it a little bit. It's a great idea. And the funny thing is I do kind of use it on the iPad, even though there's where if you hold down the command key long enough on the iPad, it'll
Right.
it will show you all the different keyboard shortcuts. I almost kind of wish they would have something like that on the Mac as well. But no, I don't I don't, as a rule, use KeyQ, but it is good. I mean, it's good software. It's just not something that I generally need or use. But
I pulled up the PopChar website here for the link as we were talking, and one thing that I forgot about, and I should probably mention this because this will matter to some folks. It's just not a feature I use. Um, they have a window that will pop up that will show you details about a particular character. So their
yeah,
example is the command key, and it allows you to see a font preview, check out what a text fragment looks like in a certain font. You can print font sheets, which is pretty awesome. I've never used that
that's
feature.
really
And it
cool.
supports ligatures. So one of the neat
Yeah.
things about what they're showing here is that you'll get not only that HTML code that I mentioned, but UTF-8, UTF-16, UTF-32, the default name of it, which we call the command key or St. John's Arms, but its official name is apparently place of interest sign. So,
It is on a Swedish map, or that's where what's her name, Susan Kerr,
uh-huh.
I think originally got it. It was a place of interest. I want to say it was like again, this is like a folklore thing. I think Swiss or Swedish mapping icon, and it came at the behest, it was of Steve Jobs, because originally that was the Apple key. And you remember they actually had the little apple on the key, the
They
little Apple
did.
logo.
Yeah, open Apple and
And
closed Apple.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they used to have the Apple in the menus. For the keyboard shortcuts, they would have like Apple K and Apple C, and
Yeah.
Jobs was like, "Okay, this is like Apple. This is nuts." He didn't like it, so he made them find something else, and then, like I said, I believe it was Susan Kerr found that she was the graphics artist. She did up the icons,
Yep.
unless it's a different woman, and I totally screwed that up.
No,
But
no, Susan Carey, you're
anyway,
right. Yep.
uh, found that and used that. So and now we're stuck with it, which it's a great thing. But I was going to mention too, kind of even to differentiate, like you said, you want to make a copyright symbol. PopChar is a great way to find out what that code is. In Typinator, and as well, and I think it might be kind of built into Apple's Mac too. To make a copyright symbol, you can just type a open parentheses C and then close parentheses, and it'll convert it into the copyright symbol.
That's
Or
cool.
do the same
Yeah.
thing with R for registration. Registered. Um, so it kind of maybe explains a little difference between the two apps too. But
Yeah, that
they're
is.
both excellent apps.
And here's, you know what? Here's another feature I didn't even know existed in PopChar. There's a shape finder. You can draw the shape of a character on the screen, and it will show all the characters that resemble that shape.
So if you've got like a Wacom tablet or
I
what?
I guess you could probably draw right on the trackpad. I don't know. I didn't even know this feature
That's insane.
existed.
I
That is
should.
pretty cool. Oh yeah, here it
I
is. There's
don't.
a little pencil. So if I click that little pencil,
Oh
all right,
wow.
I'm gonna use my mouse and I'm gonna draw a C and put a circle around it and click find, and there's the copyright symbol.
Oh my gosh, that's
I ha-
insane.
I
That
had
little
no
handwriting
idea.
record.
I had no idea that that existed. All these years of using PopCare, that is pretty awesome.
That is totally awesome.
Well, that just makes it all
Yeah.
the better.
Now that I have PopCard as well, and I have it up in the little corner right above the Apple menu. It just hides away until you move your cursor up there, and then it pops up. At least for me, pops up the PopCard window, and I just, like I said, I probably don't use it as much as you do, but it is one of those apps that will make it on my Mac. It's obviously Typinator makes it early, but it's not long before PopCar will be on there as well. It's just too indispensable. There's too many times where you're like, okay, what the heck? How do I find it?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, just whatever letter, whatever character you need,
Yeah. For
it's there.
for the occasional search for a special character, the Apple keyboard tool is fine, absolutely fine for that. But if you need to
Yeah.
do it frequently, it's indispensable, really. And I use it all the time. And they do make a version for Windows as well, I should point out.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's right. I think that's right. I did know that. Yeah.
Well, now I kind of piggybacked off of your choice there, Eric, which means that now we've done Typinator and PopChar. Um, what would be your next pick?
Well, that would probably, and again, I've done this one in the past, and I've talked about it other times too. But it is right up there. I use it all the time. It is default folder X,
Mm,
and
mm,
it takes and kind of how do you say it? It addresses some of the shortcomings of the Mac, or at least some of the shortcomings that have been there, uh, used to be there. Um, Now, probably since maybe a number of versions back, you can actually select something in an open save dialog box, and do bring down a contextual menu and do certain things like rename or move it to the trash or whatever. It used to be that was just off limits. You could do all this stuff in Windows, and it was one of those things I always said I wish they would bring over from Windows. But it was never on the Mac. Now they've added some of that stuff. However, default folder um, goes and takes that and goes much further along with it. But it's essentially what it allows you to do is default folder X runs in the background, and when you get an open save dialog box, it puts some Chrome around that box with different functionality, different features. And one of the things it does is allow you to access previous folders that you went to, previous files that you had open. So if you want to go back to, let's say, a folder that you were just in a couple of days ago, well, it'll be on the right side. You'll click on the little folder icon, and in the list, it'll be there. And not only that, but you can actually navigate through the menus, and there's little arrows. So it allows you to not only go to that folder, but you could go into the subfolder from there, all the way to however many folders deep you want. So it does that. It also allows you to set up favorite folders and like a default folder. So let's say you have a specific app, and you know that you're always going to be, or at least for the most part, using a certain folder with that application. You can assign that folder to that application through default folder, so that when you're in that application, let's say Microsoft Word, you can have it go straight to that folder, or you can have default folder go to the last folder that you were in when you used that application. The other nice thing about it is you can use it to access open Finder windows. So let's say you're in an application and you want to
mm.
open a document, and it's in some folder that's like, you know, 8 miles deep in whatever, whatever folder, whatever subfolder it's in. You can actually hold down the control key and move the cursor over the desktop outside of the open save dialog box and outside of default folders little icons, and it will show you all the open Finder windows. You can select that, and it'll automatically take you to that uh, Finder Windows contents within that open save dialog box. Then you can just open it. And so it's really, it's just got a lot of nice features that there's probably two or three more that I can't remember at this point, that I utilize all the time. But I do use that almost every day. And it comes in handy. I have just different workflows where it really, I couldn't live without it. It's just one of those things where I don't know if Apple could or would add all of that stuff. I know part of it we get after Apple when they Sherlock stuff, and then
Right.
at the same time we say, well, they should just put this in the OS. So I wish they would just add, and I certainly I think St. Clair Software is the one that makes default folder. I certainly hate to see them lose any money, but it is one of those things. At the same time, if Apple could give them, pay them for the application, it would be a great addition to the Mac, especially if they left it mostly the same.
Yeah,
But
and that
that's my next pick.
default folder X is one of those apps that has been on the list, and it's been picked by several folks throughout the years. And I know that that is one of those apps I have a license for because I'm sure I purchased it in a bundle,
In a
but
bundle.
it's something I have just not adapted to my workflow. But as you describe it,
Right.
every time someone describes it, and you did again just now, I think, gosh, I really should be using that. And yet I don't find myself doing so. I think I need to give it another go because that's definitely one that has come up time and time again, and I think could be really, really useful to my workflow.
The I was going to say, one of the things I did forget to mention, because I said this at the beginning, that now the Mac allows you to, or, act on files within a contextual menu, but you can rename files. And in fact, you can rename files using the Mac, but I just use default folder. It's got an easy keyboard shortcut. And you can also move stuff to the trash. You can move a file from one folder, one location to another, right from within default folder. And there's like several other things you can do as well. And there was something else I was thinking. It's another bonus about it that I'll probably remember this as soon as you start talking. Like as we move on 3 picks from now, I'll remember what default folder. Yeah. But besides acting on files, what else? There's it's left me.
It's left me. Hey, it's
It's
the
left
end of the
me.
year.
It's like a dream in the morning. It's completely whisked away. The neurons have been destroyed. I don't know what I was going to say.
Oh, my neurons have been destroyed years ago, Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, like I said, it's worth checking out and seeing if you utilize it. And you can, it's one of those things too where you can turn on or turn off as much as you want to. So you don't have to have all of this stuff and all of these features that you'll never use up and running. You can kind of make it as, streamlined as you want for your own use. And like I said, it's just one of those things. I tend to be lazy, so anything that makes it easier for me to access stuff and to change stuff without having to do a whole bunch of extra work, I'm all for it.
And yet I'm a big fan of apps that allow us that sort of customization, that allow us to fine tune the app to our own needs and not throw the entire kitchen sink in there when all you need is, the little sprayer.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Cool. Well, there's a little bit of a trend to my apps this year in that a lot of them are open source apps. I love the open source community. I love the apps that they put out. There's so much good stuff in there. Things that we just haven't even mentioned this year, like LibreOffice, and of course we mentioned Firefox earlier and Thunderbird. There's so many cool projects going on. WordPress is an open source project. There's so many cool projects out there. This next one is also a free and open source project. It is something I use almost daily. And in this era of privacy concerns, I really think it's something that most people should consider using, especially as they go about sharing images on the web. And this is an app called ImageOptim. It's one word, ImageOptim, ImageOptim. And its claim to fame really is to reduce image file sizes. That's its number one trick. Reduce image file sizes. So even if you use the export feature from Affinity Photo or Preview or Pixelmator or whatever, there's always more optimizations that can be done. You wonder why Affinity and Pixelmator and all those can't do these tight optimizations from the get-go, but there you go. They sometimes produce these very large images, and when you're working with websites or you're uploading images to the web, you want to have them as small as possible while retaining the highest quality as possible. ImageOptim does that for you. So if you take any file, let's say you export an image from Affinity Photo and you want to optimize that for a website, you literally just drag and drop that file into ImageOptim, or you right-click it and say Open with ImageOptim, and instantly, there's not even any options, instantly it goes about recompressing that image while retaining the highest quality possible. That's its claim to fame. It does a fantastic job. I've had it reduce images as high as 30, 40% from what they were. And, then help make web pages that these images are going on load that much faster. Well, one of the things that ImageOptim will also do, and this is where I think it becomes invaluable for everyone, is when you upload images to the web, if you are not careful, those images can have information about you embedded within them. Things like where the photo was taken, literally the latitude and longitude of where that photo was taken, what type of camera took it, sometimes the people who are in it. And this is by way of something called EXIF data, EXIF. And this is metadata that is stored in photos and is often embedded by digital cameras, but often retained. If you take a picture from a digital camera and you bring it into Photoshop or you bring it into Affinity Photo, it often retains that information, even though you resize it and export it and save it under a new name or whatnot. That information is still in there. There's also other information in there that's unnecessary, like whether flash was used or the color profiles that the camera used as it took the picture, things like that. All this not only is a privacy concern, but it adds bloat to the images as well. Well, ImageOptim can be configured to remove all that junk, to preserve your privacy and also reduce file size by removing all this extra data that's in the files that is not needed when you're sharing this image on social media or a website. So that is one of the features of ImageOptim I think is necessary for most folks. And again, it is as simple as it could possibly be. You literally open the file in it and it immediately goes to work and starts compressing and stripping information from the file. And that's really it. It will, I believe it will also do conversions. If you drag a PNG into it, you can set it so that it will automatically convert to a JPEG, thereby removing the transparency from it. And there's other tweaks you can make to ImageOptim behind the scenes to better fit your camera serial numbers. I forgot about that. Sometimes the camera serial number can be embedded in that EXIF data as well.
Sure.
But all this information can be stripped out of it, and at the same time, the benefit of reducing the image size while retaining the best quality as possible is really what makes this an invaluable tool to me, and I think would make an invaluable tool to many folks who load it on their Mac. And again, it's free, it's compatible with Ventura, and you can download it from imageoptim.com. So great little app and something I think everyone could use.
I am going to have to check that out, actually, because I utilize stuff like that all the time. In fact, I do have a different app called JPEG Mini Pro. It is not free, and it only works with JPEGs. However, it does, it will reduce the file size of JPEGs up to, oh my gosh, like 80%. And a lot of times it's at least 50, 60%. And it does not, you cannot tell the difference. And I've compared them over and over again, but it only works with JPEGs. And I think they've got it, it works with some video now, but like I said, it's not free, and it doesn't work with the entire gamut of different image files. Like it sounds like ImageOptim. So I definitely want to check that out. I'll probably download that after we get done. I do remember also what I forgot about default folder.
Ah,
It's a small point, but one of the things I said is that you can navigate through. It'll bring up these text menus and with the arrow, so you can navigate through. Well, one of the things it'll do is if you have duplicate folder names, like I used a lot of times where I'll have different folders, but the subfolders will be the same. That will be like images will be one folder, audio will be another folder, and so on and so forth.
yeah.
And it'll say images, and then it'll, in parentheses, it'll give you the folder, the super folder, the folder that it's inside of. So it basically is telling you, you've got multiple folders named images, but this is the one that it's referring to. So which images folder it is. If that makes sense.
Oh, that makes absolute sense. And for me, that's a killer feature because
Yeah.
I do exactly that. I'll have client folders, and inside the client folders, I'll have a folder called projects, and inside projects, I'll have a folder for, a website or something else that I'm working on for them. And then inside there, I'll have folders named images. And yeah, so I
Yep.
have this rigid structure, which I know a lot of
Yep.
folks say I should be using tags for, but I have this rigid structure that I use, and it works really well. It's a classic structure that goes all the way back to, Apple II days of
Yeah.
organizing files that works well. And to be able to quickly locate, like you said, the parent folder of one of these that comes up in a search would be absolutely killer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do exactly the same thing. Exactly. It must be, I don't know for, and I don't go all the way back to the Apple II days, but really early on in the classic Mac days. So yeah.
As I do, I pull up the websites for these apps as I'm talking about them, and there are features of ImageOptim I didn't even know existed, which I'll just run down some of these really quickly. So I mentioned drag and drop into the app. I mentioned being able to right-click the contextual menu and open with ImageOptim. That works well. But it turns out it also integrates with the markup menu on attached images in Apple Mail. So that's fantastic. And then
Oh
in addition
wow.
to that, you can even launch it from the command line. So,
Oh, that's
and then the other thing that I didn't mention, and I knew this was in there and I didn't mention it because I don't use it and I don't necessarily encourage it because it can potentially reduce the quality, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. But they have a lossy minification option as well, which will reduce file sizes even further. Now, lossy versus lossless is exactly as
right.
it's described. Lossy means that information is being pulled out of the image in order to reduce the file size. Lossless is when you are reducing file size algorithmically and not pulling information out of it. So lossy minification tells me that, yeah, you're going to get the smallest file size as possible, but you are also potentially reducing the quality just a little bit. Now,
You're
they
gonna get
say
artifacts.
yeah, they say that they're very cautious. I'm quoting them here, very cautious at exactly preserving the image quality. But if you allow it to change the quality, even only a little, it will be free to use much more aggressive optimizations that give the biggest results. So
Hmm.
it's something to try. It's something to play around with. And it says that it can apply lossy compression not only to JPEG images, but to SVGs, animated GIFs, and I'm not going to get into that argument, and
Jeff.
pings as well, or PNG files. So, yeah, absolutely a fantastic program.
Yeah.
They have a frequently asked questions about it, and yeah, I think it's a great app to have on your system, even if you only use it occasionally.
Well, and if you do aggressively minimize or use the lossy compression, you can always run it through the new version of Pixelmator Pro, which it removes banding and artifacts.
Isn't that
Apparently, it's
awesome?
got some machine learning dealy. I haven't tried it out, but it I definitely have some images where I could I do want to check it out and see if it works. But you could always do that. But no, that I definitely want to have this in my repertoire. I'll probably just end up using that because there's so many times where I have, PNG files or whatever where I want to, they're a pretty good size, and I'd like to, shrink them at least some,
Hmm.
and you can't do it like I said in JPEG Mini Pro. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, no, this ImageOptim sounds really, really great.
Yeah, and if you are using PNGs or PNG files and you need to reduce quality and you don't need transparency, often converting to JPEG is a great way to go.
Yeah, yep.
And that's something I believe this will do for you too. But it will also just compress PNGs as is if you do need to retain that transparency. A little bit of a sidebar here. You mentioned the new Pixelmator Pro 3.2.3, and that's where they have that debanding feature. And I just wanted to comment on that because it did mention, I noticed this as I was going to install it. One, they renamed all the machine learning functions. So they used to be ML denoise, ML super resolution, and ML match colors. Which, by the way, why don't they have an ML sharpen yet? I was looking
Yeah,
for that the other day. They don't have a
yeah.
sharpening machine learning supported tool. But anyway, they got rid of the ML on them, so it's now just denoise, super resolution, and match colors. But for the debanding, they say that you get the best results when you have 16-bit color depth. So
Oh,
if your image is 8-bit per channel depth, which is very common,
yeah.
then they recommend going into the image color depth, changing it, converting it to 16 bits per channel, and then
Oh, wow.
applying the deband feature.
Interesting. Yeah, I was going
Yeah,
to say 8-bit is very common.
super common. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that was interesting, since we're talking about it, and while we're at it, look, if you're looking for an alternative essential app, if you do any sort of bitmap editing, Pixelmator Pro is a fantastic choice. Affinity Photo is a fantastic choice. Acorn is a fantastic choice. Um, these are all great programs, all in the Mac App Store, and look, you can't go wrong having all of them on your Mac.
No,
But if you have to
and
pick one, you're not going to go wrong picking any one of them. They're all
right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But one thing that they added to Pixelmator Pro, which I was pretty excited to try, and I have not had an opportunity to, but they added new templates. So there's new holiday templates for holiday cards, posters, social media posts,
Oh,
and
cool. I
stories. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then they have
That is really cool.
some year in review templates as well.
That's neat. That's really nifty. I didn't even see that. I'll have to check that out. Man, I
Now that
wished
I
I
said that, is your next pick Pixelmator Pro?
no. It's not. It definitely could be in there though, but no. I just thought of something too. Probably why they don't have Sharpen available yet is from what I've read, a lot of this machine learning takes so much um I want to say imagery, but so much training that
Hmm.
you would have to have. I mean, it's like insane,
Yeah.
and to get it to work. And so probably it's one of those things where they just haven't had enough time to get, to put all this, stuff in front of it. And who knows, I know, like I said, machine learning is just kind of a weird thing anyway. I watched this TED talk at one point where there was some weird kind of fish, and it was a trophy fish, and it machine learning could pick out photos with this fish in it, and then they looked through the algorithms or whatever to figure out how it was doing this, and what it showed essentially was fingers, and it wasn't
Hmm.
looking at the fish. It was looking at the because most of the time the fish was being held up by people in their hands, and so that's what it was keying off of. So they said you don't really know with machine learning how it's actually working, until you really look into it. So it doesn't always work the way that humans work.
They appear to be eerily and uncannily smart until you realize how they're actually working, and then you're like, yeah, that's really a dumb machine, isn't it?
I know that's not
Well,
good.
I'm thinking we should cap this off at 5 apiece. Now, I do have a few bonus picks that I'll just mention really quickly after we're done with our fifth pick. But Eric, you mentioned LaunchBar, iStat menus, Typinator, and default folder X. What is your fifth pick today?
Fifth pick, I would have to say, and I did have a number of them, but I would want to go with Notebook. It's made by a company, or Notebook Pro, actually, in this case, and it's made by a company called Zoho, I believe, and they've been around for quite a while. And I have used Evernote for a long time, probably since 2008, 2007. I don't
Yeah, me
remember
too.
exactly when. Long enough that I'm paying them like a single amount once a year, I think every February. And I want to say it's like $45. It's a really low amount comparison to what they're charging now. And I think it's probably one of those things where they just as soon have customers like me go up to one of their newer plans and get stuff that they, even though it doesn't really have something that I like, but have anything that I would need. However, Notebook by itself is free, but Notebook Pro, which has a lot of the features that Evernote does, costs like $25 a year, and I think they've got a special right now where it's like $12.50 a year for the first year. And but I've been really looking at them just because, and as much as I love Evernote, they've done this thing where I think other companies have done, other developers have done the same thing. For whatever reason, Electron seems to be a big trend in using to develop these apps. And, One Password's done it. The Readdle, the makers of Spark, have done it. And I can't be totally sure, but it looks like Evernote has done the same thing because it's kind of the single window. The menus are a little bit weird. And it's just one of these things where it's not this native experience that it used to be. And so a lot of different reasons combined, I've been kind of looking at different notebook software, and this Notebook Pro looks really, really good. And they've got a lot of big features that they've added, including, being able to email in notes, to send it to an email address. So you can, let's say clip something off a web page or use Safari's reader view and then send that to an email, or basically send it into your notebook through email. They've got a really nice web clipper. They've got OCR technology that you can search on, the same way that Evernote does. And they've got a myriad of other features that really are worth looking into. And it's just, like you said, it's a well-designed. I don't know what it's written in, but it's not Electron. I know that. And it's definitely, a nice app to use. It definitely feels friendly, Mac friendly. Let's put it to you that way. And it looks nice and it works well.
Who makes it?
I think it's Zoho, Zoho.
Oh, Zoho is the folks who make a lot of the web-based apps, like the accounting apps and things like. Oh, okay,
Right.
okay.
In fact, I think, like Google Docs and all that stuff might have been Zoho, like Zoho Writer. I don't remember. I think they made something that somebody bought.
So this is
they're
web-based or it's app-based?
It's app-based, and I think
really?
it is also web-based as well.
Okay.
But it is an application on the Mac and iOS, as well as on the web, like Evernote is it too. So,
super cool. And so here's the important question now: as a longtime Evernote user, will it import your Evernote?
It does. It will import it. I have not actually gone through that and tried it yet, but it will do that. So I've just kind of been using them side by side for a little while, and actually for quite a while. But so it does have an Evernote import as well as some other ones. So
I also have been a longtime Evernote user, and I found myself, speaking of built-in software on the Mac, I found myself using Notes on the Mac more
Yeah.
and more. Now, I don't know how or why my brain does this, but it seems to know that certain tasks or certain types of notes need to go into Notes, and certain types of notes need to go into Evernote. I I
Yeah.
I don't I can I have no explanation for why
For
my
that.
mind works that way, but it
Yeah.
seems to instinctually know that if I'm doing a certain type of note, it goes into Evernote, and another type of note goes into Notes. I don't know how long that's going to last. I feel like I need to settle on one or the other. But
Yeah.
as a longtime Evernote user, it almost seems like over time my Evernote database has become just more and more unwieldy. Like
Yeah.
it's harder to find stuff even with searching,
Yeah.
and I think that's why I started turning to Notes for certain things. Like even for Mac Eyes Only shows, I now have a section within Notes where I keep the notes on different episodes of For Mac Eyes Only. And I might have used that in Evernote in the past, but
Yeah.
I don't now. I use Notes for that. So yeah, certain types of notes go in there, certain type of notes go into Evernote. There are features of Evernote I absolutely love, yet it
Yeah.
sounds like Notebook Pro has equivalents to all of
Yeah.
those. So
Yeah. You'd have to check it out and make sure. But yes, from what I've seen, at least for all the stuff that I've used in Evernote and have really appreciated through the years, Notebook Pro seems to have it. They definitely seem to, have looked up a lot of the main features and a lot of the things that people like about Evernote, I think, and made sure that they have it. Um, there could be differences here and there. One of the things is, I know if you get 100 gigabytes of space, where Evernote kind of does it by bandwidth. I don't really know how much space I use up
mm,
in
I don't either.
Evernote, but
Yeah.
I think it's like 10 gig. You get 10 gig a month, so it would be like roughly 120 gig a year. Where I think Notebook Pro you get 100 gig. I guess I'll see once I import all my Evernote notes into Notebook Pro for if it's like you're all filled up. I guess I'll see how much space I actually use. But
Well, there are features of Evernote that were somewhat unique to them at one point,
yeah,
like the ability to scan a business card. And once
yes,
you scan that business card, automatically add that person to your contacts, which might even still be unique to Evernote. I'm not sure. But the ability to
yeah,
scan a card or the ability to scan a piece of paper, well, that's now part of Notes
yeah,
on the iPhone. So if you fire up the camera, you can literally scan a piece of paper. It's a scanner app without needing to get a third party scanner app, and
right,
that's
right,
built right into every single iPhone that goes out new these days. So
yeah,
it's hard to justify going with a third party solution, but I think almost all of them, whether it be Evernote or whether it be Notebook Pro, have enough built into them to justify that extra effort of going outside the boundaries of Apple's built-in software.
right, right,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
So I have a number of additional apps on the essential apps list. And of course, some of these do fall within those must have Mac apps as well. But they're also apps that we talk about a lot on the show. And so I'm gonna list off some of these really quickly at the end under bonus essential apps. But I think what I'd like to do is make my fifth pick an app that we don't talk about on the show a lot, yet I believe I have mentioned it on essential apps in the past. And this became an essential app for me around the time that Apple dropped Dashboard. And the reason it became essential is because one of the features of Dashboard I used religiously, it almost feels like I used it religiously, was the calculator. I know there's a calculator in the applications folder, but it's way too much work. You talked about being lazy. It's way too much work to open up the calculator app, do my calculations,
yeah,
close the app again, when all I had to do was hit F12 or press the dashboard key, deet, deet, deet,
yep,
deet, deet, do my calculation, and then quit out of it. Well, I needed a substitute. When Dashboard disappeared, I needed a substitute. And I found a fantastic substitute in an app that's been around forever called PCalc.
Yeah.
I
Awesome.
love PCalc. Now, you may have noticed, Eric, I think you may have noticed, in the intro to the show, I snuck a little Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference in there. Did you catch it?
No, I didn't. Oh my gosh.
When I said the increasingly inaccurately named annual list of essential apps, that was how they referred to, was it So Long and Thanks for All the Fish?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
it was no longer a trilogy,
Yeah.
they referred to it as the increasingly inaccurately named trilogy,
Yeah,
Hitchhiker's
right.
Trilogy. So
Yeah.
I snuck my own little reference in there, and I use that reference fairly frequently, the increasingly inaccurately named whatever.
Whatever.
And so
Yeah.
that was my little Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference I snuck in earlier. Well, PCalc has its own Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference in that the icon has the number 42 on it. So
Yes, I know.
you
Yep.
know that there's quality behind this.
Right.
And there is quality, and it is a standalone app. If you
Yeah.
are looking for a good standalone
Well,
calculator app that
PCalc is,
that that does more than just a basic calculator, and I know Apple's does
yep.
scientific calculation as well, but this has an RPN mode, it has hexadecimal, it
Yeah,
has
which I
octal, it
love.
has binary modes. It like Apple's has a simulated paper tape. There's smart searching of conversions, of functions, of constants. You can customize the user interface on it. You can apply different skins to it to make it look the way that you want. It's got multiple undo and redo. And something that I don't use, admittedly, but there's handoff of calculations between PCalc on iOS, macOS, and watchOS, which is great.
Really. Yeah.
For anyone who might use it, there's support for the touch bar. And of course, it has support for Apple Silicon or Intel processors. But all that said, all the amazing features of PCalc, I use the menu bar app. That's what I
Yeah.
use.
Many are sweet. Yeah.
And what I have done is I have set up the shortcut key to open PCalc to match the shortcut key for Dashboard. So it's so ingrained in my brain to press F12,
Yep.
do my calculation, and quit out of it, that I set up F12, or on some of my Macs it's Command F12, and I can't remember why I did that. Oh, I think it was while Dashboard still existed and I was trying to find a substitute. I made PCalc Command F12, so that's kind of become my shortcut on all Macs except this one I'm sitting at right now. But yeah, since Dashboard was F12, I made PCalc Command F12 or F12, depending on, so that I didn't have to think about it. Again,
Yeah. No,
talk about lazy.
in fact,
I didn't want
I
to
was
think
going to
about it.
say, I use F12. In fact, I use one of my other essential apps, Keyboard Maestro, to assign a keyboard shortcut to launch PCalc, and it is F12.
There,
And
see?
I had F12 to launch it and F12 to quit it. It
Exactly.
works great. The
And
other thing,
it works great.
what-
Yep.
the other thing with PCalc on the iPhone, I don't know if you've noticed that, but so like you remember this one from when you were a kid?
Yes.
You saw it, yeah, and then you turned it upside down, and so normally you'd be able to read what that said.
Right.
Yeah, so it's five. What is it? B or it's 800B5, which spells out a word.
Yep.
And so, but when you turn it upside down, you're able to read it.
It's censored.
I know, and so PCalc does. I don't know when I discovered that, but it's just some stupid little you did when you were a kid, in grade school. You turn it.
Yeah. There was
And,
773404. No, 40. 77. I had to
Yeah.
think about it. Yeah, 773440, which of course spelled out oh hell when you flipped it upside down, right?
Right. Yep.
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 So all the different
Yeah.
things that we learned to do on those TI-30s in our classrooms
Right.
in
Right.
seventh
No,
grade. Yep.
PCalc is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. And
The-
I can't recommend it highly enough. It is, of course, not a free app, but it's a fantastic app.
Oh,
And it's quality software. Uh,
it is.
I I don't even know how long it's been around. I
It's it's been around, I think, for quite a while. I think it was on the Palm Pilot and stuff. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure one of the reasons that I discovered it on the iPhone really early on was because when you push the number, unlike the iPhone calculator, it actually pops up like if, let's say if I press the 8, it'll pop up like you do when you type letters on the Apple keyboard, and it just was great. It's smart to do that, so you can actually see that you did type the right number.
mm,
Just like you do when you're on the keyboard. It's I don't know. It's fantastic. And I love the 42 because that is, the the number in the universe. So
the answer to life, the universe, and everything, of course.
yeah, exactly.
I will say the only thing I wish could be improved on PCalc, they talk about the conversions functionality, and the only thing I really wish could be improved would be the conversions functionality. I think it's a little awkward to use, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose if you use it all the time, it kind of makes sense and cool. I get that. But it's a little awkward to use, and I do find myself turning to Spotlight for currency conversions and things like that more
Yeah.
frequently because it's a little more straightforward.
Yeah.
But that's not really why I have it. I have it for calculations. You can do complex calculations. You can do
Yep.
parenthetical calculations. Of course, as we said, there's the scientific modes, hexadecimal, octal, binary, all that stuff is all in there. So if you need a calculator that can do more than just basic calculations, you're not going to go wrong with PCalc. Well worth whatever the cost is for it. And I do not remember what it is because it's available on the Mac App Store now. And $10. 10
Yeah.
bucks.
It's
That's a
very cheap.
no-brainer. That's a
It
no-brainer.
is.
Just buy it.
Absolutely.
So that is my fifth pick is PCalc. Invaluable. Use it all the time. Not invaluable, indispensable. Indispensable. I
Indispensable.
use it all the time. By the way,
Yep.
the menu bar calculator has a copy and paste button on it as well. So
Oh,
you
yeah.
can perform
Yeah.
your calculation, and then it's got a copy button and a paste button, which I have used. I've copied numbers in fact, I've copied formulas from other locations, whether it be a website or another document, and pasted them into PCalc and let it complete the calculation for me. And then the other thing that I kind of like about it is as you are doing calculations, it keeps a little running history of the calculations you've recently created. Not on a ticker tape, not that separate ticker tape, but
Right.
like a little mini ticker tape under the digital display,
Underneath.
which
Yep.
I like that as well. So yeah, PCalc is great if you are using the dashboard widget, the menu bar widget, a
Yeah.
menu bar app, and you want to open the full PCalc. It's just Command O that opens it up, and you have access to the full calculator from there. But yeah, fantastic app. Love it. $10, definitely worth it, and
Worth it.
something that everybody should get if they need this type of functionality on their Mac.
Yeah, for sure.
So that is my fifth pick, Eric. You mentioned having some other picks. I suspect we might have some overlap here, but what are some of the essential / must-have apps that were on your list that we didn't get to, but we're just going to run them off real quick as bonus essential apps this episode?
One of the ones that I have to say, because I've been using it more and more throughout the years, and these recently updated the app, and it's just so much more kind of when you mentioned PCalc, is an app called Solver or
Oh,
Solver.
uh-huh.
It's Soulver, and it's kind of been sort of this notepad calculator. I think that's kind of what it's billed at. But one of its huge strengths is its conversions, and it's it can do just about every conversion you can think of. Plus, you can add stuff that it doesn't do. But yeah, I mean, you can do stuff like 1% of 50 years in days or something, and it'll give you the amount of
That's
days that
pretty
are
cool.
that's 1%. I mean, it's insane. So Solver, definitely Keyboard Maestro, Hazel, those apps for sure. I just couldn't live without them. I use them a lot, and even though this is built in, I would say shortcuts too,
Oh,
just because that's
interesting.
something that I really utilize on both the Mac and iOS.
Very cool. Very cool. Some of mine are pretty obvious. They're apps we talk about on the show all the time. I didn't think we necessarily even had to mention them as essential apps because really you should just have them. But
Have them?
one password is on that list.
Yeah. Yep.
Carbon
One of
Copy
them.
Cloner and ChronoSync
Yep.
are on that list. As
Yep.
long as we're talking about cloning apps, SuperDuper is also on that list. We talked a
Yep.
lot about those three apps just a few episodes ago. We haven't had an in-depth conversation about 1Password in quite a while, but it's absolutely essential if you don't want to use 1Password for whatever reason, if it's the what's the coding environment? I already forgot the Electron.
Uh,
If it's because it's
Electron. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
if
Yep.
it's because it's Electron or whatever, and you don't want to use it for whatever reason, Bitwarden is a great choice. And then
Good one.
there's one I've been playing around with a little bit called Secrets. And the only thing I really don't like about Secrets is that it is Apple ecosystem only. And that's unfortunate because it's a nice looking app. The one thing I found that all these other apps have trouble with is importing 1Password data. You can export the 1Password data. 1Password is not trying to hang on to your data at all. They'll let you export it just fine. But
Yeah.
every single one of the apps I've tried to import the data has trouble with it.
That's weird.
And I don't know what or why that is, but all of them do. And that's a shame. Let's see. I said Bitwarden. I mentioned Secrets. There's another one I've been playing with too. I'm trying to think of the name of it. But the point is, if you can't import your existing data, what's the point?
What's the point?
And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many great password keeping apps, but quite frankly, I don't want to start over.
No, I don't want to
So
type in. Yeah.
yeah, having everything in 1Password already, having an environment I know, having an environment I trust, because a password app, no matter which one you go with, has to sync amongst all your devices. It has
Yep.
to offer excellent password generation tools. It has to offer browser integration for all major web browsers. And
Yep.
the most critical thing that you need to look for is it needs to be secure and it needs to be trusted. And if you
Yeah.
can't trust them,
Nope.
regardless of the security, LastPass, if you can't trust them,
Yeah.
then don't use it. And
Yeah.
those are some of the most important things I think you need to look for in a password keeping app, and that security and that trustworthiness are the most important. But 1Password is certainly on that list. I mentioned Carbon Copy Cloner, SuperDuper ChronoSync. Some of the others that would be on that list that have made the essential apps list in the past would be BBEdit. I
Yep.
love BBEdit. It used to be I used to use Text Wrangler all the time, and they consolidated their apps into BBEdit, really, which was their pro paid for app, and now they have a free version of it. PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro, love them, fantastic apps. Mozilla Firefox, Mozilla Thunderbird, we talked about earlier, and the last one I'm going to mention is kind of a weird one, but it's Minesweeper Classic. If
Oh my
if
gosh.
you have
Yeah.
switched to the
Awesome.
Mac and you are longing for a great Minesweeper clone, Minesweeper Classic is great. It is about as close to the original Minesweeper from Microsoft that you can get. And I love it. It's in the Mac App Store for free. I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. So those are my bonus apps this episode. We got your bonus app, Solver, and you mentioned 2 others.
Yeah, Keyboard Maestro and Hazel.
And Hazel. Oh, Hazel. Yep. Yeah, Hazel is one that comes up all the time, too. We mentioned Brian earlier. Brian loves Hazel. So I think that might be it for our 10th annual, or I should say, increasingly inaccurately named annual list of essential apps. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Remember, we do love to get your letters. So if you have any comments about the show, if you have a tip to share, a software or hardware problem with your Mac, or maybe there are some apps that you feel are essential to your Mac using life, well, you can leave your favorites in the comments of the show notes, or you can drop me a line, mike@formaccguysonly.com. And of course, Eric, you can also be reached at
Eric@formaccguysonly.com.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Thanks to Eric for joining me this episode. Stay subscribed, and we'll talk to you next time.